385 days ago, the World Health Organization declared the Wuhan virus outbreak a pandemic. As of today, 128 million cases have been recorded. Close to 3 million people have died. This is one of the deadliest pandemics in human history. But even after 385 days, the world doesn't know how it began. The question of the origin has still not been settled. This should have been a foregone conclusion. The world knows the pandemic began in Wuhan in China, but the WHO team that spent 27 days in Wuhan still does not have the answers. Their probe, they say, was inconclusive. The much anticipated report is finally out. It is 124-page long. The report is high on details but low on substance. In fact, the investigation raises more questions than it answers. Let's tell you the 5 key findings of this report. The team looked into 3 possibilities. 1, the virus jumped from animals to humans. 2, it arrived in Wuhan through food chains. Now, that's a claim that China has aggressively tried to push, but it hasn't found much support. And the 3rd possibility, the virus leaked from a laboratory. Now, the WHO team says they found maximum evidence for the first possibility. That is, the virus jumped from animals to humans. So that's the most likely cause, according to them. They say the virus probably emerged in bats before spreading to humans through a quote-unquote intermediate animal. What does this mean? What is this intermediate? Well, they have no answers again. In other words, the exact source of the virus is still not clear. The WHO team says they do not have enough evidence to pinpoint the exact source yet. What about the role of animal markets? The so-called wet markets of China. No clear answers there either. Remember, the initial confirmed cases were linked to the Wuhan seafood market, the same market that China had subsequently shut down. The WHO team found that many early cases had no clear connection to the Wuhan market. So probably the virus was already spreading around Wuhan. But the question is, if the market was not linked to the outbreak, why did China shut it down? And finally, the last key finding, and perhaps the most controversial one, the possibility of a lab leak. The WHO team says a leak is quote-unquote highly unlikely. But here comes the twist in the tale. Dr. Tedros, the Director General of the World Health Organization, made an interesting statement. On Tuesday, he was heard contradicting, some say, several of the key findings of the probe team. He said the lab leak might be, and I'm quoting, the least likely hypothesis. But it still needs further investigation, meaning do not rule it out yet. Let me quote from what he said. The team also visited several laboratories in Wuhan and considered the possibility that the virus entered the human population as a result of a laboratory incident. However, I do not believe that this assessment was extensive enough. In other words, this should be probed further. He also said the WHO is ready to deploy more resources for further investigations. Well, here's what we think. For future investigations, he said, and this is what we say. We are already in that future. The investigation should have happened by now. The WHO has already botched up enough. But the fact that Dr. Tedros is saying what he is welcome change. He also made a revelation, which technically was not a revelation. The WHO chief said the probe team had difficulty in accessing raw data in Wuhan. Who was holding back that raw data? China. What is China's response to these statements? The same old denial. With Dr. Tedros keeping the lab theory alive, Chinese experts today deflected all questions on the subject. When asked about the sharing of data, the Chinese scientist who was involved with the WHO team in Wuhan said that some data cannot leave the country because of privacy reasons.
Of course, according to Chinese law, some data cannot be taken away or photographed. But when we were analyzing it together in Wuhan, everyone could see the database, the materials. It was all done together. For example, some data that involves patient privacy and requires the patient to know and agree, this is a legal requirement. I think this is also a basic international rule.
Imagine China talking about basic international rules. At the same time, Chinese diplomats remain very combative in their defense. We'll tell you more about it in just a bit. First, let's tell you how the world is reacting to this WHO report. High-profile WHO member states have slammed it. Yesterday, the United States and 13 other governments released a joint statement. The list includes the United Kingdom, Japan, South Korea and Australia, which also happens to be the first country that demanded an international investigation. Now, these countries have questioned why China is withholding data.
The report lacks crucial data, information, and access. It represents a partial and incomplete picture. There's a second stage in this process that we believe should be led by international and independent experts. They should have unfettered access to data. They should be able to ask questions of people who are on the ground at this point in time, and that's a step the WHO could take.
That was the White House press secretary. The U.S. wants the WHO to bring in independent experts to take this investigation forward. Needless to say, Beijing is not warming up to that idea. WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.